Hello, Mr. Overman.
Hi. No need for the Mister. Just Howard.
Okay, Howard. Yeah, I'm Alejandro from Spain.
Hi.
And hello, nice to meet you. Nice to talk to you. And first of all, now that we're talking about the second season, there's a 6-month time jump between seasons. So I wanted to know how is everything in the beginning of the season? How is humanity after being fighting against the aliens for half a year?
Yeah, it's actually 4 months. Yeah, I mean, things have changed, and it's sort of, we find our characters in interesting situations. Some of them, the ones in France, have been relatively unscathed throughout the 4 months and have escaped from immediate danger in the observatory. So in some ways, they've been allowed to sort of develop their personal lives, but it doesn't take long before the war crashes back in. Whereas the guys in London have been, more or less fighting constantly, and we see the effect that's had on them. Tom has gone from being a sort of innocent teenager to quite a hardened soldier. Sarah's, working in a hospital, patching up people with gunshot wounds. Jonathan and Chloe and Sasha have been sort of scouring London, surviving, hunting for his family. So, I mean, it allows us to sort of show the sort of effects that the war has had on them, but it's been a sort of battle for survival for most of them, Emily is sort of missing, and she comes back to discover our characters have changed and the world isn't as she left it.
And the other side of the war is the one in which there is the aliens, and I find it really interesting that aliens look just exactly like us, because it makes us kind of realize that sometimes we are just like our enemies. And
yeah,
that's a really interesting theme in nowadays. So was that one of the themes that you wanted to explore in this season and in the show?
Yeah, I mean, that was always the idea that we sort of we talk about people as aliens or enemy, and basically, they're just like us. And that was always the idea that, and I guess that it's been a sort of classic strategy of war to dehumanize your aliens and try and make your soldiers think, well, they're nothing like us and it doesn't matter if you kill them. And that's been sort of classic sort of strategy. And our characters are made to confront the reality that they are just like us and they have real similarities, and that decisions that our characters make affected the aliens and have to some extent caused the situation is what we'll uncover. So you get lots of sort of answers to the questions. But yeah, I mean, I think you've hit upon the sort of key sort of theme about you've got two groups of people who view the others as the enemy, but the differences between them are much smaller than they think.
And I don't know if you had already developed the scripts before the European COVID outbreak. But anyway, has everything that has happened in the last year made you rethink or reaffirm your approach to this show that portrays a global menace?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make me rethink because I'd already, by the time COVID hit, I'd already written most of the scripts for season 2. So, and interestingly, we have a virus in the show. And I think what it did make me think is that it just felt more prescient, more relevant. And I was telling one of the other journalists, I was walking to my office here along totally deserted streets, and it felt like, I was in a post-apocalyptic world, and it felt very strange to be writing a sort of post-apocalyptic show while this sort of huge global event was happening. But I think, that it sort of made me realise that the show, that these big global events, bring out the worst in us and the best in us. And I think that that's sort of true of the characters in the show as well. We see real bravery and sacrifice, but also we see real cruelty and evil. And I think that that's sort of, that just sort of confirms sort of I guess the pandemic has confirmed my view of the world, that we are sort of many-faced monsters, and sometimes we're capable of real kindness and sometimes we're capable of real cruelty. So yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of, the first, certainly of, from my age, the first global sort of event that we sort of faced, and it's been really interesting watching how we've responded to that.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting that we've had the chance to witness how we as individuals and as society react to such an extreme situation. That is something that the show explores since its beginning. So, do you think that after seeing what has happened in the last year and how society has divided in many ways, there's been a lot of confrontation with everything that has happened with COVID. Do you think that we would stand a chance if aliens invade us tomorrow?
Who knows? I don't know. You like to think, yeah, I mean, look, there's sort of been bits of, our reaction to the pandemic, as in sort of creating the vaccines in record time, which, everyone was saying there's no way you're going to come up with a vaccine. And they did it. And not just one vaccine, multiple vaccines. But then, immediately showed the sort of worst of humanity in the sense of people immediately going, well, we want all the vaccines for ourselves. So it's that double-edged sword of the best and the worst of us. And I think that that's sort of what, is the constant issue, isn't it? Is sort of, and even when it comes to smaller issues about hoarding toilet paper or food, that people make small decisions in supermarkets about, well, everyone else is taking an extra pack, so I better take it because I don't want to be the one who hasn't got anything, rice or pasta or whatever it is. And it's so easy to sort of, think you're above it until you're in the supermarket and you suddenly find yourself taking an extra pack of pasta. And you've been really, you've been watching the night before going, oh my God, look at all these idiots taking, all the pasta. And then you find yourself in the supermarket and you think, oh, maybe I should get an extra packet. And you find yourself sucked into that sort of way of thinking. And I think none of us are above it, no matter what we say. It's, it's sort of infectious. And so, I don't know, I guess it would depend on, how easy it was to defeat the aliens and who they were and all the rest of it. But, and I guess you could flip that question around. It's sort of like, how would we react if we discovered the aliens and what would we do to them? And I think that's constantly what I'm interested in is sort of, if the positions were reversed, what would we do? It's because it's not just about a question of what they would do, it's what would we do? And I think things like the Cold War has shown that we're perfectly capable of sort of, getting to near, I was listening to a documentary about the Cuban Missile Crisis and, the sort of how close we actually came to sort of, nuclear Armageddon over, frankly, what at times was a bit of a misunderstanding. So, there's this theory that actually they avoided the confrontation escalating because a slightly overweight Russian sailor got trapped in a hatch and couldn't get up to sort of fire something or do something. I can't remember. So it's these, and that's what I'm kind of interested in the show, is that taking a big global situation like an alien invasion and boiling it down to sort of our individual decisions, not just sort of decisions of politicians or governments, but what we do as individuals during these sort of crisis moments. And I think that's what's interesting to me.
When the first season released, I had the chance to talk with Gabriel Byrne, and this was before the pandemic, and he already said that there were real threats to humanity, like nuclear war, environmental disasters, and that could end with humanity, basically. So, in your opinion, which are the threats that could end with humanity in the future?
Well, I mean, I think probably it seems that perhaps the most pressing at the moment is, the environment. Obviously, apart from the immediate effect of COVID, the sort of longer term is sort of, I guess, the environment. But I think we're very bad at thinking about threats which are 50 years in advance, or whatever the time frame is. I don't know whether it's 20 years, 30 years, but and I think COVID shows, in some ways, we've been quite good at responding to an immediate crisis, and that has galvanized us. But if you said, oh, this, the people have been predicting a pandemic, saying, oh, there will be one coming, but because it hasn't been there, we haven't really responded, or we weren't prepared for it, and I don't really blame politicians for that, because if all these governments have spent tens of billions of pounds preparing for a pandemic and it never happened, well, everyone would be going, oh, it's a waste of money and you should be sacked. And it's us who basically dictate. We're quite short term in our thinking. So who knows what threat will do for us? But, we just hope that we sort of, rise to the challenge of whatever threat it is.
Okay, thank you so much, Howard.
Thank you. Nice
and congratulations for the show. Have a nice day.
Take care.